Hello everybody, welcome to the Holistic Chef Academy virtual cooking class. My name is Jamie Raftery, thanks for joining me today. I'm excited to introduce an Italian plant-based menu for you. So I'm going to introduce two very kind of classic Italian dishes in a plant-based vegan format. So first dish is going to be a pearl barley risotto. It's a very humble grain barley. It tends to be forgotten about. And I find it a very inexpensive, very nutritious grain. It goes great in risottos, stews, soups, and even salads. So I'm going to talk a lot about this grain today and how you can use it in different recipes. And then we're going to cook a very nice, beautiful, autumnal, comforting wild mushroom and pumpkin barley risotto with a little bit of kale. And then I'm going to season that with a cashew Parmesan. So I'm going to talk you through how to make a vegan style Parmesan. And then the next dish we're going to do a pasta Puttanesca, so a very traditional Italian dish that was founded kind of after the wartime when food was rationed. There wasn't an abundance of ingredients around, and this is kind of when tomato-based Italian sauces started to become more popular. And the Puttanesca was kind of one of those store cupboard things that most people in Italy had some olives and some capers and some garlic and a little bit of chili as well we have in there, and tomatoes, and mix all that together in a nice blend for a nice pasta sauce. And it's a really, really delicious sauce, very simple. I think it's indicative of Italian cuisine in that with simple ingredients you can have a sauce that's really impactful. I cooked this dish for a client a few weeks ago who's been a vegan for 10 years, and he said it was the best vegan dish he ever had in his life. So that's a great compliment. And with the dish, you know, we've got capers, we've got olives, which provide like sourness and saltiness, and the pickleness from the capers as well. We got chili there, a bit of spice, we got the garlic, we got the sweetness and the sourness of the tomato, and then the freshness of the herbs. So combined all together in a nice sauce with a nice fresh pasta, it's an all-around delicious dish. So traditionally anchovy is used in a puttanesco. So for today's class I'm using a spirulina pasta, which kind of gives a little taste of the sea, and also I'm going to finish that with a little bit of seaweed. And then I'm going to serve on the side a pesto, a pumpkin seed pesto, just an extra little bit of protein, and I want to introduce veganized plant-based pesto. So traditionally pesto is made with a lot of Parmesan cheese and pine nuts and so on, but with pesto you can get all creative. You can use any type of seed or nut and different types of herbs, and no need for Parmesan. I'm going to use a little bit of nutritional yeast. It's kind of like the veganized Parmesan flavor. So there are the two main recipes I'm going to do, and the two little sub recipes. You've got me here for the next hour and 10 minutes or so, so sit back, relax. The recipes you should have received. If not, you find the link below. And a big thing about cooking is in the organization. It's why I like to provide all the recipes for you and as much guidance as possible. This is a live class. There's not a lot of live classes that you can view like this. Many of them are like cut short to like 15 seconds for TikTok or Instagram, or in a very 3 to 5 minute video on YouTube where you see the key points, but you don't actually see every aspect of start to finish cooking. So it's a much more in-depth experience, I believe, that I'm happy to introduce and to showcase to you. So a little bit of housekeeping for the class. We got a few students tuned in. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We got a student from Barcelona. We got one from London. And where else? From Galway. I think we have some from Galway tuned in today as well. So hope you're all ready to cook along. If you're not cooking along, just sit back and relax. Any questions you have throughout, my lovely sous-chef behind the camera is going to answer them all for you. So just text through. We have you all muted, not that we don't want to hear you, but just to get a nice flow of the class going. And we will have a live Q&A session at the end. So write down all your questions and we shall answer them at the end. So we got a good little bit to go through. Just to introduce you to the class, what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off cooking the pearl barley risotto, because that's what takes the longest to cook. With cooking, whatever menu you're doing or whatever recipe you're doing, you want to look at the ingredients you have and the dishes you have, and it's all about timing. Cooking is actually the easy part. What I'm doing now is just adding in all the ingredients and mixing. You know, that's the easy part. The challenge in cooking is bringing the accumulation of everything at the one time, and then timing, planning like what I'm going to do first and what I'm going to do last. And you know, it's a very meditative process. It's a craft and a skill that you need to be very focused on what you're doing. If you don't focus and you're not paying attention, things can get burnt, you forget something, something gets overcooked and left in the oven, and then it doesn't go how you want it to go, and you get annoyed and you don't try it again. So it's good to really, like, you know, give it your time and attention. In essence, it doesn't take that long to cook healthy food at home. In the supermarkets and convenience, the big brands are trying to sell us convenience. They put everything in a box. Here, put it in the oven, 5 minutes, easy, 10 minutes. They're selling us convenience, but they're also selling us products that are not necessarily healthy or good for us. So getting back to home cooking, I believe, is a good way to take control of your health, to be more conscious of what you're eating, to take more joy and pleasure and fulfillment in the food you're making and cooking every day for yourself, your partner, your family, or your kids, and also to save money. Believe it or not, eating healthy like this at home is actually a little bit cheaper, a little bit more cost effective, I believe. Like when you get whole food, plant-based ingredients, they're not that expensive. You know, the main things on the shopping bill that are expensive are the wild salmon from Alaska and the hand-dyed scallops from Scotland and the prawns from wherever they come from, and all the fillet of beef that's come from a cow that's been like grass-fed for 45 days, and all this fancy branding stuff to put the price point up. So generally the high-cost ingredients I do not use more or less anymore, any animal products. And I believe that they're not actually just costly and financial-wise, but also environmentally. They cost the environment a lot. You know, it takes 8 kilograms of plant-based grain protein to feed animals who will produce 1 kilogram of animal-based meat protein. So it's completely unsustainable. I like to just cut out the middleman, cut out the cow and the animals, and get straight to what they eat. They don't just eat grass and grain. They eat corn and barley and loads of plant-based grain. So whole food plant-based. You know, it doesn't necessarily need to cost a lot. So it just takes a little bit of effort and energy, but that's good. It'll be worth it. So we're going to start with the barley risotto. First stage, I have soaked this barley for about 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours since I've soaked it. Ideally, you want to soak it overnight. At least 3 to 4 hours is good. By soaking it, you're just like activating it a bit. You're softening the grain. You're washing it nicely. And I'll rinse it a couple of times as well, and give it a couple of rinse, because grains and pulses and all these things, from when they've been harvested to, you know, they go to the factory, they go to a warehouse, they go to a supermarket, they've been repackaged a few times. So it's good to wash them, give them a good wash. So I'm going to start with this, just straining off this barley that I have been soaking for about 3 hours. And then that's just the barley I had for the demonstration. They're very cheap. It's only like €1.50, €1.50 per kilo. Super, super affordable. And as well, you know, put it in soups and stews. If you're making a nice chunky vegetable soup or a stew or a broth or something, pop in a few handfuls of barley as it's cooking. And the barley, the starch in the barley will cook it all, will like thicken it up a little bit, and also add a good amount of protein to the dish. Now, barley is not a gluten-free grain, just for all of you who are avoiding gluten for whatever reason. It is not gluten-free, okay? So if you could use arborio risotto for this recipe instead. So a lot of beers are made from barley, and a lot of misos are made from barley. So it's a very, you know, significant crop grain around the world. I say bring it back. Okay, so then what else are we going to do? So we're going to start off like a traditional risotto. A traditional risotto is fried onions. You fry off your onions and your garlic and you cook it all down. And then we're going to add in the grain and just stir all that around a little bit. But just before the grain, I'm going to put in some mushroom and some pumpkin. The reason I'm putting in the shiitake as I'm cooking is it just provides a little bit of flavor for the stock. I'm using water today. You could use a good quality organic stock cube, or if you want to make your own homemade vegetable stock, it will give it an extra boost. But I'm adding a little bit of pumpkin, a little bit of mushroom to the barley as I am making it, and then that kind of flavors the stock as we go. So it takes about 30 to 40 minutes to cook. So I'm going to get that on cooking, leave it aside, and then the next dish I'm going to be doing, I'm going to make the cashew parmesan, a very quick technique I'll talk you through. Then we're going to make the pumpkin seed pesto, another quite quick recipe. And then we're going to roll into the pasta puttanesca and get that on cooking. And I'll cook the pasta at the same time as I'm cooking the sauce puttanesca. And then all of everything should come through. Okay. Shall we get started? Yeah? Okay. Everyone ready? Where's my water?
Do you want to talk?
Okay, let's get cooking. I'll have some more water, please, chef. Okay, time to get cooking. So, it's just like a normal risotto. But normal risottos, I cooked hundreds of risottos in my career. Wild mushroom, pumpkin, lobster, every type of risotto you could imagine. And it's a very, very beautiful dish. There is an art to a good risotto. There is a really fine art. I've had a lot of bad risottos in restaurants, and there is a fine art to it. Like little things like, you know, you have to heat up your risotto rice before you add your stocks so that the grain opens up and it absorbs the liquid. You got to add the warm liquid at a nice slow and like cook it into it so you get a nice emulsion going. You got to use a good quality stock, a little bit of white wine to deglaze the risotto as well at the start. And then at the end, you don't want to cook the risotto till it's mushy. If you overcook a risotto, it turns to mush and it's like, it goes like a rice pudding. So you want to cook risotto also in a big wide pan and then cook it almost just al dente and allow for a little bit of residual heat. And then traditionally it's finished with loads of butter, loads of Parmesan, and sometimes some brown butter as well, and some fresh truffle and all that nice kind of stuff, and all mixed in together and then served straight away. You need to kind of cook a risotto and serve it straight away. So there's a fine art to it, and it's a very nice dish, but this is like my kind of variation of the traditional risotto with no dairy, no eggs, no, you know, it's a little bit lighter as well than the richer risotto. So to get started, I'm just going to chop my onion. Ready? So nice and fine. I think about a half an onion is enough. I've got a little bit of olive oil in the pan. I just want to start it off slow. Low and slow. A little bit of crushed garlic. And then I'm going to dice the shiitake mushroom and the pumpkin, and I'm going to get that in cooking with the barley as well. And what that does, it just provides an extra little bit of flavor. It reminds me of pumpkin, wild mushroom, sep, truffle risotto we used to do at Gidley Park. Used to be on a regular feature on our lunch menu. Delicious, really delicious, like a nice, rich, loads of truffle, loads of Parmesan, but hey, we can still get enjoyment and pleasure out of food in a healthy way. You know, most of my career I spent making really luxurious food with truffles and caviar and oysters and lobster and all these kind of, you know, so-called luxury ingredients and very rich sauces and all that, and very delicious food. But it's not food you can eat every day. You know, Michelin star food and all that, you can't go and eat that food every day. It's very much special occasion food for a wedding or a birthday or a special celebration. So over the last 6 years, I progressed to more kind of healthy, wholesome food that you can eat every day. And that's food I'm much more happy sharing because I think it's more appealing and more applicable to much more of the population rather than just the 1% of the population who actually eat at Michelin star restaurants. So shiitake provide a nice flavor. They're nice and meaty and umami. I've just given them a little rinse, small little rinse before. How are we doing there? Everyone cooking along okay? Everyone up to speed? Any urgent questions so far? All good. All good. All good. So I'm going to cook the onions down with no color, just sweat them as it's called. A nice slow sweat, just like make them nice and sweet. Raw onion is a little bit bitter. So we just want to sweeten them up a little bit. I have these ready to go here next. And then my garnish for the risotto, I'm going to add in at the end. I'm going to cook it later on. It's all in here, okay? So I've got some extra mushrooms and some pumpkin and walnuts and Parmesan and pumpkin seeds. And I'm going to roast all this together later. And then we're going to garnish the top of the risotto with that. So in the risotto, we'll have a nice creamy, rich, pumpkiny, mushroomy, herby risotto. And then a nice garnish with roasted pumpkin and roasted mushrooms and walnuts and pumpkin seeds on top. And then a few spring onions to garnish. So that's the all-around kind of dish. We're getting hungry thinking about it. So with cooking, you're always thinking ahead. Okay, we're always planning ahead what our next step is. As one thing is working, like cooking is very much about patience as well and timing. When one thing, if it takes 5 minutes to do, don't stand and look at it. There's always something to do. Okay, so we'll prepare the kale. I'm just going to cut the kale leaves down a little bit. I'm going to add the kale. Does not take a long time to cook at all. So I'm going to add in this just near the end of cooking. Beautiful ingredients this time of year, August going into September, going into October is one of my favorite times of year back in the West. The ingredients that are coming to fruition have been ingredients that have been in the ground since springtime. Imagine the flavors and the nutrition that they've been developing all throughout the summer. Turnips, beetroots, sweet, parsnips, pumpkins, all these wild mushrooms, salsify, all the apples and pears. Beautiful time of year, really. Right, so I shall go in with the mushrooms and the pumpkin. So what we used to do for seasoning risottos was at the end we'd finish it with a puree, like a pureed pumpkin or a pureed mushroom or a pureed butternut, and then that kind of adds more flavor into it. But with this technique I'm just cooking the pumpkin in here, so as it cooks throughout that'll break down into a puree and it'll be a nice kind of, give a nice consistency and nice flavor throughout. A little pinch of salt. It's good to season as you go, add little bits as you go, so you're building up layers, you're taking the flavor out of each ingredient as you go. Okay, so I got my kale ready for the end. I've also got a few spring onions. I know they're not autumn onions, but spring onions are good. They give a nice freshness, a nice vibrancy to the end of the dish. So I'm going to chop these now. And that'll be all my pearl barley risotto ingredients. Mise en place, we call it. Mise en place is a term that's used in France a lot. It's called, what's it mean in English again? Mise en place is preparation. So it's a big word in kitchens. You got your mise en place ready. And this basically is mise en place. It's everything weighed up, ready to go. So you just need to turn the pan on and get cooking. So it's good to break down your cooking process into different stages. First of all, get your ingredients sourced and ready and organized and in the house, in the kitchen. Next stage is just get chopping, slicing, washing, weighing, measuring, and get all the ingredients kind of lined out dish by dish so you get a visual on it. And then you can take a break, relax, chill out, don't stress, give yourself plenty of time. And then the next stage is cook. What I'm doing now, it's just the actual cooking, the easy and the fun part. You can turn the music on, crack open a kombucha or red wine, and cook some delicious food. Okay, that spring onion's ready. Okay, so I'm going to go in with the barley now. It's quite a lot of barley there. I'll leave back that. Just going to let it mix everything together for like 1 minute. a pinch of cumin. I like just a hint of cumin with mushrooms and pumpkin. Cumin's a really good flavor. It's really good. So just a little hint of it in there. Right, and then in with the water. So it's a very forgiving grain. What I mean by forgiving is it's hard to overcook it. So it'll absorb a lot of water as it goes. So we're going to keep an eye on it as it's cooking. And if it gets quite thick and it's still a little bit of a bite to it, we just top it up with a little bit more water. So I'm going to a little bit of salt in there. Not too much salt now because the water is going to like reduce down and reduce down and reduce down. So if you put in a lot of salt now, it's going to get too reduced and a little bit, maybe a little bit salty. And that's it, easy as that. Onion, garlic, pumpkin, mushroom, cumin, pearl barley, water, boom, onto the heat. I'm going to give it to my beautiful sous chef here to put it in the back kitchen on the side stove here cooking. It just needs to cook away for 20 minutes. Keep an eye on it, like a little stir so it doesn't stick to the bottom. Low and slow is good. Any stew, any curry, low and slow. A stew boiled or a risotto boiled is a risotto or a stew spoiled. So just nice and low and slow. Patience with it. So I'm going to leave these aside for later. Oop. Okay, I'll show you how to make a cheeky little vegan Parmesan. I found out this technique about 3 years ago. I thought it was a revelation. We're using basically cashew nuts, and the secret ingredient is nutritional yeast. Nutritional yeast is a deactivated yeast. It's not a living yeast like that's used in bread. It's a deactivated one, fortified with vitamin B12, so there is some nutrition content in it. And however the process is done, it tastes like cheese. But however the fermentation process is for the yeast, it gives a nice kind of cheesy flavor. So in all vegan cheeses that are made, all these vegan cheddars and blue cheeses and everything, there's a lot of nutritional yeast used in it to give it that flavor. So very simple technique. I've got some very lightly toasted cashew nuts. You can use almond, walnut, pecan, any kind of nut really. I find Brazil nut is a good one as well. Or I've used macadamia as well. So we're just going to grind it down in a blender with a little bit of nutritional yeast. And you can use garlic powder. The recipe I have that I've shared with you is garlic powder, which I do not have, but that's okay. Just a little bit of fresh garlic. And I have some variations then of these Parmesans where sometimes I add in a little bit of miso for a real umami kind of cheesy flavor. But today's one, we're just using the cashews, nutritional yeast, pink salt, and that's it. Okay, if you got headphones on, lock your ears. I'm going to give this a good blend for like a very important aspect, okay? You need to stay with it. What happens when you blend nuts for too long, all the natural oils will come out and you'll get a nut butter. That's how nut butters are made. They're just blended and blended really slowly until they get blended down and all the natural oils come out. And that's how you get a nut butter. So if you leave it here for too long, you'll have a cashew butter, not a Parmesan. So just stay with it and give it short pulses, okay? Block the ears. And then it's good to have this little black thing as well. Or chopstick. Chopstick's a good thing. And just get down to the corner here, because in the corner it'll start turning to a butter sooner than the other part. So to get a nice even blend. And a little taste. Always taste as you go. These little cheeky tastes are good, because then you know, okay, it needs another pinch of salt or pepper or whatever you think, or more garlic. Okay, another quick little blitz. And that's it. It doesn't get easier than that. It's a nice technique. So you can keep this in a little glass jar or in a jar in the fridge. It's good to keep it in the fridge. It'll keep fresher. Because you've kind of blended the nuts down, you've exposed them to oxygen, so they will lose their freshness. So it's best to keep this kind of ingredient in the fridge. It'll last in the fridge easily 7 to 10 days. You can pour it on top of salads, pastas, fried rice. Now, that's it. May I get that? Thank you. It's good to have a sous chef in the kitchen. I think cooking's all about teamwork. It's all about teamwork. The most successful teams I have worked in are the teams that work together the most. And it doesn't matter if you're in a big professional kitchen or if you're in a couple or if you're in a family. It's very much about cultivating and developing a teamwork, because there's a lot of work to get a healthy bowl of delicious food on the table. There's a lot of work involved between sourcing, planning, sourcing, shopping, getting all the ingredients, to then preparing it, cleaning up all after all the preparation, the actual cooking and the serving, and then the cleaning down after. I know as a kid I used to leg it from the dinner table quite quickly. I don't know, as a kids just don't like washing up. So it's very much teamwork, and the more everyone works together as a team, the better the food will be for everybody, basically. So, pumpkin seed pesto we'll go on to next. So I'll talk you through the ingredients. I've been making this pesto for like about 5 years. I think the original recipe I got off the medicinal chef. Thanks for that, Mr. Medicinal Chef. He was kind of one of my first kind of chefs that I used to see using food as medicine like 7 or 8 years ago. And I seen him doing all these like goji berry energy balls and granola bars and pumpkin seed pesto, and I was like, wow. So I think this recipe actually originated from there. I just remember that now. And it's quite a revelation, because it's like pumpkin seeds are a super powerhouse of nutrition, you know, loads of minerals, loads of good fats, loads of protein. So incorporating all these into a pesto or a salad is quite beneficial. And there's recipes on my website for pumpkin seed milk if you want to check that out. So I use these quite a lot in different recipes. So a lot of oil here. There's 100 gram of oil. I might add a little bit more. I know that's very fashionable and trending now, no oil recipes. And that's okay, I understand if people are avoiding oil, and there is a lot of bad oils out there to avoid, so I commend you on that. The only oils I use are olive oil or coconut oil, or when I'm back home I use a good quality rapeseed oil. Here in Italy I use, or not in Italy, here, I'm not in Italy, am I in Italy? We're in Thailand actually, kind of Italy and Thailand, Thai-Italy, Thailand. I use rice bran oil, the oil made from the outer part of the rice, and that's good for frying over here. So do be selective about the oils you use. And what's the word to describe this? I don't know if corrupt the right word, but it's a very lucrative industry in that you can have the fanciest of bottles of olive oil at $380 a bottle, and it's been 20 years old or something like that, and it's a crap oil inside. So don't judge a book by its cover, in that if it's a good bottle doesn't necessarily mean it's a good oil. So be careful about the brand you buy from, and do look into it. So good olive oils are expensive. It is worth the investment. So for pestos like this, I'd use a good quality olive oil. And again, look at the Mediterranean diets. It's one of the healthiest diets in the world from the studies I've read and understand. So lots of, good fats, good oils. Tends to be, I think, there's a misconception now, I think there's a lot of fear over carbohydrates. There's a lot of obsession about protein. There's a lot of confusion about fat. And there's a lot of unawareness of fiber. So I think all around with nutrition, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of different things, and you don't know who to believe or what to believe. So this oil, you can reduce your consumption, but just be careful of the quality of the oil you use. So this recipe calls for a little bit of nutritional yeast as well, in place of the Parmesan. I have a little bit of garlic in here as well. Roasted garlic traditionally is used in a pesto. So I'm just using a raw garlic, a nice fresh one, and then some lemon juice just to cut through the acidity of everything. And then of course basil. But again, you can use any herb. Italian basil is a really good one. I've got Thai basil here. It's a very different flavor. Completely different flavor, so the whole pesto is going to be completely different. So the pumpkin seeds have been lightly toasted. All in? Yeah. I have to think for a minute. So what I do with this recipe is I blend all the seeds and the garlic and the nutritional yeast and blend them till they're nice and smooth. And then I add in all the herbs and blend again. Whereas if I add all the herbs in now, and by the time if you think about it, a nice tender, fragile basil leaf and a pumpkin seed, they're different textures. So it'll take longer to blend. By the time everything is smooth, these will be brown. So I'm going to blend this first and then add in the basil. So traditional ways of making pesto are in the crook packs, in these things here. And they really do make the best pestos. And same, they're used here in Thai cuisine a lot because you slowly grind down the herbs and you naturally release the oils much more smoothly without too much oxidization. So this is the modern technique which I'm going to use. I might do a combination of both. I'll see how it works out. First of all, I'm going to blend these, get them nice and smooth, so block your ears again. Yeah, a little. Maybe not. Can I see? You put it up here. Yeah, a little bit more. So I'm just topping up the risotto a little bit. A little. Okay, so that's our pumpkin seed paste. And then in here, I'm just tempted to make the pesto in here, but it's going to take a little bit longer, and I got a busy time. It's hot in here today. We're here live in the jungle at Phuket. It's rainy season. It's about 35 degrees outside, so it's quite humid. My Irish skin and body temperature are getting used to it. 3 years here now. It's very hard to get Italian basil over here. It does not grow. It's the thing with the humidity here. Certain things do not grow. I helped set up an organic garden last year in Tanya Mundra, and I worked closely with the gardeners there. And they said things like carrots, beetroot, Italian basil, these kind of like Western ingredients, they just do not grow here. It's just too humid. But then other things grow in abundance, so there's enough. I don't miss too much here with the abundance of certain ingredients. So into the Thai basil and then blitz again. Okay, another quick little blitz. And that's it, it's done. Another little blitz, nearly there. I don't want to overblend it. The thing is, if you overblend it, you're going to heat it up and it'll discolor, or you'll bruise it too much. So, just short bursts like that. Okay. My spatula. Yummy. I'm going to put it in this bowl, please. Oh, it's great. I love when something comes to me when I need it. So it's lovely. There's a nice texture here from the pumpkin seeds. I'm going to stir in the lemon juice now to season, and probably a little bit of salt and pepper as well. If you want a little bit of spice, you could always put a little bit of chili in here too. It's nice as a butter too. I remember just putting this on sourdough toast. You know, it's a really nice pesto just to have in your fridge to bring any pasta to life, or to lather on top of sourdough toast, or put on your salads just as a salad dressing. So it's an all-around really good kitchen essential recipe to have. Thank you, Tara. Okay, taste test. haven't put any salt in there yet. So it is very bland. So we want a little bit of pink salt. Finished, don't need it. A little bit of pepper. And then some lemon juice. Lemon juice just cuts through and like balances it nicely. Now, look at that, beautiful. Yummy, yummy. How's the barley risotto?
Do you want to share?
You can pop it here. So that's really brought it to life. Them few little touches. Take a good bit of lemon juice, but then few little pinches of salt and little pinches of lemon take something from being ordinary to extraordinary. Really, the small little touches do make a big difference. Okay, one more taste. Yummy, yummy. That's it. You can keep that in a glass jar in the fridge. You could freeze it too. I've kept this in the freezer before if you want to make a large batch. Pop it in the freezer. And what you can do, a little tip for preserving it, just put a little lathering of olive oil on top. It just helps put a film over it so no oxygen will get at it, so it doesn't discolor. And also keep it covered nicely. And there you have it. Beautiful pumpkin seed pesto. Really good fats, good olive oil, good pumpkin seeds, nice flavor of garlic, lemon juice, some nutritional yeast in there. Yummy. That'll be nice on top of the pasta and barley risotto. So you can pop it down there. So check it in on my risotto. It's looking good. It's a bit bland. I'm just going to build up the seasoning a little bit at this stage. And that's looking good, as you can see. You know, it's absorbed all that water and more, and it's going to absorb more. I think maybe 4 times water to 1 part grain. So just going to let it tick over there for about another 5 minutes. Then I'm going to leave it over the side with the lid on, just let it set. And then it's time for Puttanesca. Okay. I'll do that at the end, yeah. Okay. So if you see the way I work as well, you know, nice and organized and everything laid out, when you're finished with something, get rid of it, and then you bring the next dishes on, so you always have a nice clear bench around you. So I'm going to get rid of this now. I don't need this. We get our next dish ready, Puttanesca. And then after the Puttanesca, we're going to go in and roast the mushrooms and the pumpkin to garnish the risotto. Yeah. So we're going to cook pasta. We're going to cook the pasta next. Who knows how to cook pasta? I think I learned to cook pasta when I was about 9 years old. It was one of the first dishes I ever cooked. Pasta with tomato puree, mayonnaise, and grated cheese. Yummy, absolutely delicious. My first dish. My dad and my mum used to cook it for us a lot. It was like our signature dish. I think every family has like a signature dish that's kind of repeats a lot. But we used to love that, a lovely treat. A nicely cooked pasta or tagliatelle. Nice cheesy, mayonnaise mix. It was yummy. So pasta, there's so many different types of pasta. There's like noodles in Asia. There's thousands of varieties made with different flours and so on. back home in the West and Italy, there is literally hundreds of pastas, and it's a real fine art. I used to make so many pastas in restaurants I've worked in before, and I love the whole craft of making the dough with a good flour and good seasonings and rolling them out into different shapes and sizes. Pasta, be careful with the brand you use, you know, because some pastas, all pastas are a processed ingredient. They are highly refined and are highly dried. So just make sure there's good, it's a good quality brand, you know, it's a good quality ingredients in it. And there is a lot of artisan pastas on the market now using chickpea flour and lentil flour, quinoa flour, buckwheat, all these different kind of grains. So there's some healthy pastas out there to source. Here in Phuket, I sourced a spirulina pasta, which is quite a revelation, really good quality. They do a fettuccine, linguine, and a penne called Spirup. And it's just wheat flour, water, and spirulina, about 14% spirulina, so it's quite high. And it's a really delicious pasta, nice texture, a subtle taste of the sea. So I have the water boiling on the side there. You can't see this because I've only one thing, but I'm just going to simmer it, the little tagliatelle things. The main thing when you're cooking pasta is have a big pot of water to pasta. Don't put loads of pasta in a small pot of water because it'll get sticky and it won't cook properly. So simmering water, you can put a splash of olive oil in it if you want and some salt just to season it, and then cook it. Every pasta will cook slightly different depending on the brand and how dried it is. The more dry the pasta is, the longer it takes to cook. When we made fresh pasta, it would take 5 minutes to cook. So look at the packet instructions, see how long it takes to cook, and then do your timing around that. So we're going to cook the pasta, and then when it's cooked, let it sit in a strainer, and then we're just going to drizzle it with a little olive oil to prevent it from sticking. And that's it. Then we're just going to keep it at room temperature, and in the meantime, I'm going to hopefully have the Puttanesca sauce ready. So it just started sticking to the bottom here a little, so just be careful. It takes a little bit of looking after, just with, you know, depending on your pan, if you have a non-stick pan. I guess this could work in an Instapot. I know they're very fashionable now, Instapots, and they're very handy and convenient. I used to have one before too. We want a nice base flavor here, like just a base flavor, because we're going to add loads of other garnish and toppings there as well. Lovely. So I'm just going to put a little bit in here, and then we'll put that on the back burner, and nice and low and slow. So the risotto's slow. We're just going to cook it another 4 or 5 minutes, and then turn it off, leave the lid on, let it rest. So that gives me about 10 minutes to make the puttanesca and to cook the garnish for the pearl barley. So the puttanesca sauce. Pasta's in, right, lovely. Puttanesca sauce, we start with garlic and chili. Oh, very similar to Thai cuisine. A lot of Thai dishes start off with chili and garlic. It's kind of the basis of a lot of sauces and stir fries. So I just crush the garlic clove a little bit, and then that makes it easy to get the skin off. You can use a garlic crusher here by all means, or just with the side of your knife, just crush it down. Lots of garlic, Italian food, lots of garlic. Okay, pan on, a little bit of olive oil to get her going. I'm going to go in with the garlic, keep my eye on it, and go nice and slow with the garlic. Meanwhile, the tomatoes I'm going to chop up nice and just cut them in like 1/4 roughly, depending on the size. When you're selecting the tomatoes, choose the ripest ones you can, the reddest, most ripest tomatoes, and touch them. The more moisture and the more juicier they are, the better they're going to be, because we just need a sauce. We're going to make a really rich, delicious tomato sauce out of this. Some people may cheat and use a tin tomato sauce for this. It'll work, but believe me, like using fresh tomatoes, fresh ripe tomatoes, are much nicer and I believe much healthier too. I do use tin tomatoes sometimes, but you know, tend to use fresh as much as possible. So when you're chopping, I like to have a big chopping board. I cook in different houses a lot, and I always take my chopping board with me. Always. If I don't have my chopping board, I feel a little bit lost. And it's quite important to have a big space, big chopping board to work in that doesn't slip and not moving around everywhere. It's just more functional, more practical. And then always work methodically, like left to right. See, I have all the raw ingredients. I don't have them that I have to cross over here all the time. So I have my tomatoes beside me here. I chop them here and then they go in here. So it's all set up. Part of my setup, every kitchen I work in, I always make sure like the setup is nice and smooth. Makes it more enjoyable to cook. Okay, the garlic, you don't want to burn the garlic or don't turn it black. It's nice and soft, you can smell it. So 4 more tomatoes. I could have chopped all these beforehand and just said here's the ones I chopped earlier and put them in. But I think it's important to see each step of the process as much as possible. And this is a live cook along here. So it is, you know, part of the learning and teaching process is to see every aspect completely unedited. All in. And I'm going to put the chili in next, okay? I didn't put the chili in at the start because if you fry the chili with the garlic, sometimes it gets like quite a strong flavor and a strong smell around the kitchen. So I'm going to put in one of these Thai chilies. Well, 3/4. I think that's enough because they're quite strong. Every chili will have a different strength. So many of them, from Portuguese piri-piri to, yeah, you can turn it off. They all have different strengths, so do actually have a little taste. Just taste. And the big sweet red chilies are like more like capsicum, so you can put in a lot of them. But then it depends on how spicy you like it. Up to you. Okay, I'm going to crank that up a little bit. You can leave the lid on now. So the barley risotto is cooked. Let it sit, put a lid on, turn the heat off, and just let it rest, let it relax. It's been busy cooking. It needs a little rest. The pasta is cooking as well. It should be about 2 to 3 minutes off. You can always set a timer. If you have a timer in your kitchen, I advise you can use it too. Like click on a timer on your phone or a separate timer, just so you know where you're at. So with the tomatoes, a little pinch of salt. What that does is it helps bring all the moisture out of the tomatoes. And what we want to do here essentially with the tomatoes is make a sauce out of it. So we're going to cook them down as much as I can with their natural juices. Top it up with a little bit of water if needs be. And then we have a nice rich tomato sauce. And then I'm going to finish it with chopped capers and olives, some nice Niçoise olives. And then finish with some chopped coriander and seaweed. Traditionally, parsley is used, but it's a rarity here in Thailand to get parsley. So coriander works okay. Okay. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave a few capers and a few olives to garnish, to sprinkle on top, to make it look nice. Ooh. And then the rest, I'm going to chop, 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 nice and small, nice and fine. So Puttanesca is the kind of dish, if you do it on its own, you can have start to finish, have it done in 15 minutes. I bet you could. First thing, get all your ingredients ready. Get your 2 pans out, cook your pasta. While your pasta is cooking, it usually takes 8 to 10 to 12 minutes. While the pasta is cooking, you can chop your garlic, chop your tomatoes, get them cooking, sweat them down. While they're sweating down, you're chopping your olives and your capers. And then you're chopping your parsley or coriander. Finish your sauce, drain your pasta, and then add your pasta into the sauce, mix it all around in a bowl. Happy days. It's realistically achievable, I really believe. It's not a very complicated dish. Puttanesca. Okay, lovely. Some nice finely chopped olives. Capers, what you can do, they're being brined. Caper berries are brined, so they're in a very salty brine. So what you can do is wash them. I give them a little wash first. Otherwise, they can be a little bit salty, which is fine for if you're adding a few, but it's just something to be aware of, that they can be very salty. But it's kind of a nice saltiness, a pickledy, briny saltiness. Okay, done. If you see it here, it's breaking up nicely. You know, I've not added any water there yet. And we've got a nice saucy tomato stew, a little bit of garlic, a little bit of chili. You can just imagine how nice this is going to taste. I'm going to leave a little bit of herb. How's everybody doing there? Cook-alongs, are we all up to speed? No one's made any fires yet? No disasters? No smoke alarm gone off? No fingers cut off? What I love about Italian food is just so, yeah, you can leave the lid on and just leave it there. What I love about Italian food is just so fresh. It's very ingredient driven. Good ingredients, cooked well, fresh herbs, fresh pasta, and it's the simplicity, the art of simplicity. Okay. So it's starting to sizzle a bit. I think we've got all the water out of the tomato. So I'm going to help it along with a little splash of water. That'll bring it all together nicely. Cook that down. Pasta, we're just starting to strain off now. We strain it. We don't pour like water over it or let it sit in water or anything. We're just going to let it strain. Just let it sit on the strainer and then drizzle it with a little bit of olive oil. And the olive oil just helps prevent it from sticking. Now. Oh, it's hot in here today. I'm going to have a little taste. Taste as you go. Yummy. Oh, nice. Can I just give a little, please? Thank you. Now there's our beautiful spirulina tagliatelle. It's just cooked, set in a strainer, drizzle with a bit of olive oil. And then when I'm ready to finish, when everything's ready, I'm just going to mix it all together in the pot here. With me chopsticks. So again, clean them as I go. Luckily I have a sous chef here to help me, otherwise I would do it on my own. But it's good, keep your area clean. It's worth it. Spend that extra minute or two, clean your knife, clean your board, have everything laid out nicely. So here we got the coriander, caper, olive, seaweed, ready to garnish the puttanesca. And the barley is ready. How are we doing on time, Chef Tara?
We're on time, Chef Jim.
Nice. Yummy. Okay, ready. So that wasn't difficult, was it? You've seen it every bit, start to finish, except sorry you couldn't see the pasta being cooked on the side. But that's it, it's more or less ready. So I'm gonna, can you pass me a plate, a bowl from the table? I'm gonna plate this up now in a minute. Thank you. Okay, that's done. So as you can see, a nice saucy mixture. Garlic, chili, tomato, a little splash of water, a little bit of salt. So that's ready to mix. In the meantime, time to cook the garnish for the, no? Oh, it isn't, okay, I've been right. I'll give you this one, watch this out. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to finish the puttanesca while it's all ready to go. We'll garnish it up. Okay, so depending on how many people you're cooking for or how hungry you are, okay, lovely. I'll use, yeah, thanks. Okay, so in with the warm pasta, in with the herbs, in with our capers, in with, it's a lot of olives, I'm not going to put it all in, and then a little bit of seaweed for the taste of the sea to replace the anchovy. And as you can see from that, hopefully you can see, it's a beautiful mix already, really colourful. Nice green pasta, red sauce, green herbs, we've got the black olives. It just looks inviting, looks delicious. So again, be careful with, pasta when you're mixing it as well. You want to coat it in a little bit of the sauce. The reason pasta shapes are all different is because it depends on what dish they're for and how they hold the sauce. But a dish like this, you just want to coat it in the sauce and then we serve some extra sauce on top. Oh, nice. Okay, I've kept a little coriander stalk for on top. And then a few olive slices and a few whole capers. Just gives it that nice visual first impression. And then we can put a little bit of chopped herb, just a little bit on top. And a little bit of seaweed, finely chopped seaweed, powdered seaweed. And there we have it. That's our pasta puttanesca, a beautiful bowl of pasta, A1. So I probably would have enough for two there, but we've gone one. We'll have to cut it in half in a while. So I'm going to leave that here. Yummy. I'll swap you that. have the pearl barley over. So just to recap, we got our pesto done. Pesto's ready. We got our cashew parmesan ready. They're both going to garnish our pearl barley risotto. I'm going to crank up this heat now and finish the garnish for on top of the risotto. So as you can see, the risotto is like a nice bowl of delicious, creamy pearl barley, nicely seasoned. Still, it's quite dry. It just absorbs so much water. So I'm going to add in a little bit more liquid to it. Meanwhile, I'm going to roast all this garnish. Okay. So more mushrooms. I got these beautiful, what are they called again here in Thai? Little oyster. Nice little oyster mushrooms. Mushrooms are getting very popular recently, I see. And rightly so. Incredible mushrooms. I think they're being cultivated a lot all around the world now. And very nutritious. Mushrooms have a lot of protein as well. Many different variations, each one with a different flavor. So you can do a mix. This time of year as well, autumn time, there's going to be so much wild mushrooms available. Morels and what else? Seps. Seps would be nice with this. You never had seps, Tara, have you? Seps, like the king of mushrooms in the West. Beautiful, amazing ingredients. I haven't tasted them for a long time. I was hunting for seps in our farm at home in Ireland. I found a sep one time. It was so exciting, under an oak tree. Seps tend to grow under or beside oak trees. So when you're cooking mushrooms, generally add a tiny bit of oil, sometimes even no oil. I just add a little bit of oil there. Reason being is because mushrooms are predominantly made of water. So when you put them up to the heat, a dry pan, all the water will kind of evaporate. And then the salt helps take all the moisture out as well. And you can hear it here, it's starting to sizzle, which is good. Because the aim of the game here is to get a nice roasted caramelized mushroom. You get flavor from roasting the mushroom. A lot of people do not like mushrooms, and I have a suspicion that it's because they've had mushrooms that have been either not fresh or not cooked well or not seasoned well. And it can be a very unpleasant experience having a mushroom that's an old mushroom that's not cooked nicely. But when you have a really good fresh mushroom that's been harvested freshly and a nice bit of seasoning, and again we're on the cumin here with this dish. Cumin and mushroom is a beautiful combination, or even mushroom and curry. Just a small hint. It just helps bring out the mushroom flavor. So now, in with the oil, and you should start to hear a sizzle now. And that's flavor. That smells like flavor to me. So what's nice in here too is a little clove of garlic. Clove of garlic and a sprig of thyme or rosemary is beautiful. If you're cooking mushrooms, like if you take one thing from today's class, even if it's cooking how to cook mushrooms, you've achieved a lot. Because it's a way of taking an ingredient and elevating it into something truly delicious. So if you have some thyme or rosemary or sage, pop it in there. Hopefully I don't set off the fire alarm here. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to take them off the heat. They're 3/4 cooked. I want to cook the pumpkin now. I cook them separately because, you know, pumpkin and mushrooms, they take different times to cook. So I just want to cook them separately and then add them back in together. In French cuisine, that's called a fricassee. No, blanquette. Blanquette. Two types of sauces in French cuisine. You have a blanquette or a fricassee. A blanquette is where you cook everything separately and then add them together. And then the fricassee is when you add everything together, and you just all stir fry it together like a fricassee of mushroom or a blanquette of something else. So a little bit of salt in here. Turn it down a little. And pumpkins absorb a lot of oil. So there's another little splash. The flavor of pumpkin really transforms when you roast it. All the natural sugars in the pumpkin will caramelize. And there's a real difference between a steamed or boiled pumpkin and a roasted pumpkin. It's like two different ingredients. Really, like the flavor comparison is so different. We're quite lucky here in Thailand. We get pumpkins all year round. So you can see that now. You got a nice golden brown pumpkin. So I'm going to get them golden brown on both sides, and then add in a little bit of water. So it's kind of like roasting and steaming, or roasting and poaching at the same time. It's another French technique, roast and poach. They do with meats a lot, but also vegetables. So it's like a combination of roasting and poaching. And that's flavor. Cooking is all about getting flavor into stuff. Applying heat and applying flavor. Okay, coming together nice. So I'm just going to take it off the heat now. They're roasted nicely, so just that little bit of thing, and hear it sizzle. Because you've got all the flavor in the pan there from roasting the mushrooms and everything, you know, all the sediment and the little caramelization, they stay in the pan. By adding the liquid, it's called a deglaze. You deglaze the pan and you get all that sediment off the pan, and that forms the basis of your sauce. So traditionally I would have come along here with a bit of butter and montate it, and you can make a sauce out of that, but we keep it fresh, no need for that. So once they're about 3/4 cooked, I'm going to add in the mushrooms back in, and then I'm going to add in the walnuts and the pumpkin seeds that have already been lightly toasted. I've just toasted them separately beforehand. And can I have the zester, please, Tara? And then just a kind of a little, oh, there's kale. We've got kale to go in here too. I nearly forgot. Kale doesn't take long to cook, so that's gone in now. And the little flavor I'm going to use, remember we got cumin going through here, and we got a little bit of garlic going through. I'm going to add in a little bit of orange zest. The flavor of orange with the pumpkin and even the mushroom, just that little scent, that citrus aroma, is quite enjoyable. Another splash. Again, these are all little things that you do not see when you write down a recipe. Like a recipe is just a list of ingredients and quantities and a method. But actually seeing it being done in each step of the way is another way of learning, because there's all these little touches, little additions you add, and it's very much intuition. You know, kale, depending on the time of year and the variety of kale, is going to cook different times. So some kale is quite tough. It's going to take like 5-6 minutes to cook. Other very tender kale only maybe take 1 or 2 minutes to cook. But you only really know that when you're actually cooking it and you're tasting it and you're seeing it. So you have to adapt your cooking time accordingly to, you know, be flexible to that. So our pumpkin is cooked there nearly. I'm going to add another splash. Back in with the mushroom. In with my walnuts. In with the pumpkin seed. In with a small little twist of orange. And just a little bit of spring onion. Now there we have it, ladies and gents. Whoop. That's our little fricassee or blanquette, little stir fry you could call it. A nice autumnal stir fry to garnish our risotto. Roasted pumpkin, roasted mushrooms, walnuts, pumpkin seed, a little zest of orange, little hints of cumin in there. Finish a little bit of spring onion. I'm gonna have to taste that. Hot. Just the smallest little bit of salt and pepper, and we're good to go. Whoops. Can you use that wipe, please? So this risotto you can keep in the fridge. You can make this base risotto and keep it in the fridge for like up to 3 days. And then just heat it up when you need it. So the final taste test, a small bit of salt and pepper. The pumpkin is cooked nicely, the mushroom's cooked. It's quite thick, you know, it keeps absorbing liquid, kind of like chia seeds does. Keeps absorbing liquid, so just adding that little bit of extra water to it. You know, you want a nice texture where it kind of falls off the spoon, kind of like a porridge. If it's too thick, it's just going to be too heavy to eat. Tiny plate up. The last dish of the day, service time in the MasterChef kitchen. Nice, our autumny pearl barley risotto. There's enough here for probably four good portions. Remember, it's quite filling as well. You don't want a huge bowl of it. And it's very inexpensive. And then we shall do some garnishing. I get all chefy and get my tweezers out. You can just chuck all this in a bowl and put it on the table and let everybody serve themselves. Or if you want to get a little bit fancy, a little bit chefy, you know, just play around. You can use a spoon. Or a tweezers like this is nice. And then just build around the color. It's all about colors. And you imagine eating this as well. You know, you want a little bit of nut and a little bit of seed in nearly every area, so that every biteful has a nice textural mouthfeel. And then fill the gaps with a little bit of green kale. All we need here is some white truffle or black truffle to finish it off. Something I haven't had for quite a while. Okay, and then just get in there for the seeds. So the balance I find for a dish like this, you know, we have a grain here, we have a vegetable, we have a mushroom, we have a nut, we have a seed, and we have a herb. So that's how I find like a nutritional balance. I have no idea how many calories or carbs it is, but from you know, a more holistic look at it, it's got most things you really need in a dish, which I just mentioned there. And then, you know, it's very seasonal. This time of year, autumn time. And pumpkin, we have pumpkin seeds and the pumpkin vegetable. So there's already a connection there as well. So that's it. Oh, and we'll put a little bit of Parmesan on top. So what I'll do then is just put some little touches of Parmesan. Rather than sprinkle it everywhere, nicer just to have a few. And there we have it, our restaurant style pearl barley risotto with roasted pumpkin, wild mushrooms, kale, finished with roasted walnuts and pumpkin seeds and a cashew nut parmesan. I'd say that whole dish cost maybe 30 pence to produce, very cost effective. Batch cooking, if you do batch cooking or meal prepping, I know you can't take 2 hours every day to make a couple of dishes. If you can, fantastic. I urge you to do so if you're at home and have lots of time on your hands. If not, if you're batch cooking, make a big batch of this, keep it in a tub, box up, get a few boxes in the fridge, and this whole risotto, you got 4 or 5 portions there. And same with the pasta Puttanesca sauce, you can make a big batch of. So all the dishes I do in all these classes, they are, batch cook them, meal prep them, and fill up, stock your fridge up, even fill your freezer up if you can. So you save time, I know we're all busy, places to go, people to see and everything. So it's about that filters into the planning and the preparation and the organization I mentioned. It's not just about being organized in the preparation and the sourcing and the prepping and the cooking, but also in the stock rotation and planning ahead, planning your meals ahead so that you save time in the long run. And most importantly as well, you get access to good, healthy, nutritional food regularly, which I truly believe that is the core fundamental of everything. If you eat well, you feel well. You eat good, you feel good. You feel good, you do better work, you have better relationships, and you're more motivated, more creative, and so on. So that's a little introduction to our Italian today. Thai was 3 weeks ago. You can go back and check out that menu. I think we've done about 7 or 8 countries now in the last couple of months. Upcoming, we're off to Ireland, England, and where else? And Morocco. Yeah, I did a culinary adventure in Morocco about 4 years ago. I worked with an argan oil company in near Agadir. So I used to go out traveling around Morocco a little bit, working with a Berber community out there. So I tried a lot of the cuisine out there, a lot of camel and a lot of goat. We actually went to, so I won't go into more detail about that. But tagine. Tagine is the Moroccan dish we'll be introducing, and it's a very beautiful story around the whole dish. It's cooked in a clay pot, and it's cooked for hours and hours and hours, and there's a lot of prep going in for the family to get all the ingredients together, to layer up the tagine, to make it together, and then to take the lid off the tagine when everyone's sat around the table, and it's like a feast, it's like a celebration. So it's a really beautiful introduction to Moroccan cuisine, and part of all these classes I do here is just to introduce little classics on different countries around the world, because cuisine really is limitless. There's limitless avenues for exploration. So how's everybody on the cook-alongs there? Any questions coming in? We got some live Q&As coming in.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. The first thing is about the Parmesan.
Mm-hmm.
Can I use every nut to make it, or it have to be only a few special nuts?
Indeed, you may. Walnuts works good, almond, macadamia, pecan nuts works okay. I wouldn't recommend it as my favorite one, but the best would be cashew, almond, walnut, and even Brazil nut works good, but just make sure the Brazil nuts are very fresh. Some Brazil nuts can be very old and rancid. They go rancid very quickly. So if you get good quality fresh Brazil nuts and chop them down nicely, they're really high fat content, so they'd be good.
Do all the nuts have to be toasted beforehand?
Yeah, it's better to toast them. It gives them a bit more flavor and activates them, bring them to life. But don't soak them in water, because then you won't be able to blend them down.
Okay, the next question is for the pesto sauce. If I don't like the pumpkin, can I use sunflower seed, or you have another seed recommended?
You may indeed. Sunflower seed works really good for pestos. Also, cashew nuts works really good, soaked first. And what other seeds have we? I would not use flaxseed or would not use chia seed, because they absorb liquids a lot. Any other seeds? Sesame seed I haven't used in pesto, no.
What about the watermelon seed?
Yeah, you could try that, yeah, if you can source watermelon seed. But yeah, you can be versatile with them.
And last question.
Yeah.
If I would like to add milk in the pearl barley, do I have to mix with the water, or I can just use the milk instead?
You can use milk. You can use a plant milk by all means. It'll change, you could use an almond milk there, it'll change the whole flavor profile a lot. And just remember, I use water because it's very neutral. Like, we've added probably 3 liters of water in there and it's reduced and reduced and reduced down. But it's neutral, you know, so it doesn't change the flavor too much. But if you're adding a lot of milk in there, like coconut milk or almond milk, you want to reduce it and reduce it and reduce it down a lot so it can become quite rich and heavy. So I would recommend like just a nice flavorful liquid watery stock, and maybe just finish it, like just to finish with a little bit of cashew cream or hemp cream or even coconut milk or something like that, just to finish near the end would be my recommendation for that. So good questions, everybody. Looking forward to seeing your pictures on the Holistic Chef Academy Facebook group. Tune in there. Next class, we're up on Wednesday. We're cooking with banana blossom, an ingredient you may not be able to source. There's some hanging out on our banana trees out here. So we're celebrating local indigenous ingredients for a few weeks. And the master classes will evolve depending on where in the world we are and what time of year it is. But it's nice to celebrate local seasonal ingredients. And then next week, we're up with... we're doing a date night cooking class coming up soon. So we got a full schedule coming up for September. So tune in, and thanks for joining me, and happy cooking, everybody. See you next time. Thank you. Ooh. Put some pumpkin seed pesto on top. Yummy.